with all the talk that had been around about my succession, I thought it was probably a good idea to try and hook up with someone famous that might give me a shot at a second career here. So we were available for weddings and funerals and bar mitzvahs. And we actually had one offer the other day I thought it was kind of insulting. They got offered $1,000, and I mean, for me and Paul, that really seemed a little ridiculous. And I told the people that, and they said, "Okay, we'll make it 10,000 if just Paul comes." Our tax rates now for corporations are far lower than when Charlie and I were operating, and American business actually was doing pretty good then. But for much of our life, corporate taxes were either 52% or 48%. But I don't want to try and convince you because I don't want you to try and convince me. So we'll call a truce on that, and I'll let Charlie comment.
I'm going to avoid this one.
And people complain about me abstaining.
Preface it by saying he says that he is a true admirer of Buffett and what he stands for, so please don't confuse my bluntness and straightforwardness with a lack of admiration or empathy with this amazing person and his master creation. With that disclaimer.
Yeah, but
his question is, you've stated several times in the past that if management, you, wasn't capable of delivering a better return than the index, then management wasn't doing the job.
Well, we should remember that Warren's standard talks about net worth of Berkshire increasing after full corporate taxes at roughly 35%. And the indexes aren't paying any taxes. And so Warren has set a ridiculously tough standard and has so far met it over a long period of time. In the last couple of years, the net worth of Berkshire after full provision for income taxes went up, what, 60?
Something like that, yeah.
$60 billion.
Yeah, pre-tax probably $90 billion.
Yeah, and so if this is failure, I want more of it.
We're comfortable with it. The sellers that do come to us, that care about their businesses, are comfortable with it. And I think it'll continue to work well. Charlie?
Well, obviously we behave the way we do because we like doing it. And number two, it's worked pretty well, and we're unlikely to stop.
Okay. You can tell he doesn't get paid by the word.
A phrase like cost of capital, which means different things to different people, and often means silly things to people who teach in business schools. We just don't use it. Warren's definition of behaving in a corporation so that every dollar retained tends to create more than a dollar of market value for the shareholders is probably the best way of describing cost of capital. That is not what they mean in business schools. The answer is perfectly simple. We're right and they're wrong.
I look good compared to him, don't I?
The question is, other than Berkshire,
other than Berkshire,
what would you invest in today?
Yeah, well, it's a great question, but it's not going to get an answer. Charlie, do you want to answer it?
No, I think you've given exactly the right answer.
Yeah. Well, I'm sorry to disappoint you, but we've disappointed others when they've asked that question.
In a spirit of transparency, you're asking for something that wouldn't be good for the shareholders, and it's not going to happen unless the SEC makes it happen. We're way better off without adding to the culture of envy in America.
Yeah, there's no one that looks at, there's no CEO that looks at other proxy statements and comes away thinking I should get paid less. I mean, We haven't seen. Have we ever seen that?
No, no.
Well, we're not old enough.
I would say that envy is doing the country a lot of harm, and our practices are envy dampeners.
Sometimes we don't think alike, and we never go away in the least bit mad if we don't.
Yeah, but most of the time we think alike. That's one of the problems. If one of us misses it, the other is likely to too.
Yeah, I would say that. Well, there's no question. If you look at the really bad mistakes we've made, I've made them. I'm probably a little more inclined toward action than Charlie. Would you say that's fair, Charlie? Or?
Well, you once called me the abominable no man.
We're not big disciplinarians of our subsidiaries day by day. We don't want them to feel that way. And there's one company I'm thinking of where I've never been there. Probably only talked to the fellow who runs it 3 or 4 times in 10 years. You know, there's a lot of cash around. Every now and then he sends me some. And if I really need it, I mean, I know where it is, and he'll give it to me. But it doesn't really make much difference, you know, whether it's sitting there or whether it's sitting at Berkshire. I don't want to encourage to our managers of our other subsidiaries who are listening to this a new way of behaving. But I sort of adapt. I sort of adapt to the companies, except when we really need the money, and then I grab it.
If there's any secret to Berkshire, it's the fact that we're pretty good at ignorance removal. And the nice thing about that is we have a lot of ignorance left to remove.
Well, that's what happens when I call on them. But so far, nobody's brought up in the meeting any successor to Charlie. And frankly, I have a lot of trouble thinking of anybody that could be a successor to Charlie. Charlie, you want to comment? I got to give you a chance.
I don't think the world has much to worry about. Most 90-year-old men are gone soon enough.
The canary has spoken. Okay. A zero interest rate policy has had a huge effect both in rejuvenating the economy and in terms of asset prices. It has not, in my view, produced a bubble. That doesn't mean it can't produce one, but this is not a bubble situation at all that we're living in, but it's an unusual situation that we're living in. Any further thoughts, Charlie?
No, I'm as confused as you are.
Oh, good. That's why we get along so well. We're at noon. I promised a group, some people, 6 years ago, I made a bet for charity on how a index, Standard & Poor's 500 index fund would compare in performance to a group of hedge funds, and a firm in New York took me up on the bet, and I promised that every year I would give the up-to-date results on how we're doing, and it's getting to be more fun to give these results every year. So I think the best result for the Coca-Cola Company was achieved by our abstention, and we will see what happens in terms of compensation between now and the next meeting of Coke. Charlie?
I think you handled the whole situation very well.
And Charlie remains vice chairman. Charlie, incidentally, was the only one with whom I talked over the vote before, or the abstention before I did it. I called Charlie and told him about the plan, and we agreed on the course of action.
If it's a very competitive business, and it plainly requires qualities that you lack, it should probably be avoided. When I was at Caltech, I took thermodynamics, and Homer Joe Stewart, who was a genius, taught the course. And it was perfectly apparent to me that no amount of time or effort would turn me into a Homer Joe Stewart. He was utterly, impossibly more talented than I could be. Gave up. I immediately decided I wasn't going to try and be a professor of thermodynamics at Caltech. And I've done that with field after field, and pretty soon there was only one or two left.
Yeah. Yeah. I had a similar experience in athletics.
We can handle a little bit of subpar growth for some stretch or other, but it would be quite dangerous to let the whole damn thing blow up because a bunch of crazy politicians were printing money.
If you own a home, though, with a very large mortgage and you have incredible inflation, it wipes out the mortgage, and you've still got the home. I mean,
In Weimar, Germany, they gave you the mortgage back at the end.
Well,
It's very interesting. That's the one thing they did right.
he's way ahead of me, folks. We never get any precise figures because people come and go from the meeting, but I did know that we sent out about 11,000 more tickets this year than any other year, and we had all the overflow rooms filled. We were using space in a room over at the Hilton and everything. So clearly this year we have substantial more attendance than any year in the past, and I hope the spending patterns reflect that.
Yeah, I spoke earlier about the desirability of removing your ignorance piece by piece. And there's another trick, which is scrambling out of your mistakes. And we've been quite good at both. And it's enormously useful. Imagine Berkshire, a textile mill, sure to go broke because power costs in New England were about twice as high as they were in TVA country. A sure to fail department store, and a trading stamp sure to be forced out of business by change in mode. Out of that comes Berkshire Hathaway. Talk about scrambling out of mistakes. I think of how we might have done if we had had a better start.
A guard company at airports, again, should be owned by somebody whose net worth does not get out to two figures. So that you won't see much of us in the sports arena now. But, Charlie, are you looking at the Clippers? Or, now I'm worried that he is. No.
Whatever Warren thinks about sports teams ownership, I like it less. Well, I'm not sure the schools are at fault. I would place most of the fault with the parents. I think the most powerful example is the behavior of the parent. And so if you're...
I agree with it. The most important thing is the parents, but not everybody gets the right parents.
Yeah, well, it's very hard to fix people who have the wrong parents.
Well, let's just say you had the job of fixing people that had the wrong parents. What would you do about it?
Well, let's suppose you had the job of living forever. What would you do about it? I mean, it gets to be so impractical. Who would ever believe that I would have any ability to fix all the people that have the wrong parents?
How about a few?
I don't think I'm good at that either. The only thing I've ever been slightly good at in my life is raising the top higher. It's just that they left the talent out of me. I don't scorn it. I think it's a noble work. I'm no good at it. I don't think you're so hot either.
If he had been in public, it'd have been stronger. Charlie,
The frugality basically has helped Berkshire. And I look out at this audience and I see a bunch of understated, frugal people too. We collect you people.
But forget about it this weekend. The more you buy, the more you save at these prices, folks.
Yeah, some of these things happen a lot more slowly than you might think. I went to a program at Harvard, at least 30 years ago, describing how color movies were going to come to the house on demand, and they were just around the corner. Well, they've come, but it was 30 years later. I have the feeling that self-driving cars having a huge impact on the market may take quite a while. Yeah. And so I'm not...
That would be my guess, but we could be wrong.
Yeah, it could be wrong.
But if we are wrong, we'll be wrong together. Frankly, it was fascinating to me because here was something I understood. And to watch extraordinary universities that essentially were teaching people some very, very dumb things, and where even to obtain positions in the departments of those schools, you had to subscribe to this orthodoxy, which made no sense at all. And it got stronger and stronger, and then now it's changing to quite a degree. But it may have soured my feeling on higher education to an unwarranted degree, because that it may have been particularly bad in the area that I was familiar with, but it was bad. Is my language okay, Charlie?
You would have liked academics better if you'd taken physics instead of finance.
Yeah, well, I'm glad I didn't.
Do you ever have any plans, or would you be interested in buying a professional sport team or sports equipment manufacturing company? Being that sports is in a global world today, or is this out of the Berkshire game?
Warren's already done it.
I owned a quarter of a minor league team, but it's not responsible for my position on the Forbes 400. The answer to your question about buying a sports team is no. In fact, if Charlie and I, if you read that either one of us is buying a sports team, it may be time to talk about successors. That ability to know when you're playing the game in which you're going to win and playing outside of that game is a huge asset. I can't tell you the best way to develop a great sense of that about yourself. You might get some of your friends that know you well to offer contributions. Charlie's given me a few contributions occasionally, saying, "What the hell do you know about that?" That's one way of putting it, of course. But Charlie, can you help him out?
Well, I don't think it's as difficult to figure out competence as it may appear to you. If you're 5'2", you don't have much of a future in the National Basketball League. And if you're 95 years of age, you probably shouldn't try and act the romantic lead part in Hollywood. And if you weigh 350 pounds, you probably shouldn't try and dance the lead part in the Bolshoi Ballet. And if you can hardly count cards at all, you probably shouldn't try and win chess tournaments playing blindfolded, and so on and so on.
You're ruling out everything I want to do.
But competency is a relative concept. And what a lot of us need, including the one speaking, is what I needed to get ahead was to compete against idiots. And luckily, there's a large supply. And
what is the logic of comparing a stock market index against the rise in an operating company's book value? And an operating company is predominantly what Berkshire is these days. So why do you annually make this irrational comparison?
let me answer that one.
Okay.
The answer is you're totally right.
Yeah.
And we do that because Warren wants to make it eccentrically difficult for himself. So if you don't understand people who like to wear hair shirts, you'll never figure out why anybody would do such a thing. It's a ridiculous way to make a comparison, but it makes it hard for Warren to look good. and he likes to climb mountains that are difficult. But it's insane, you're right.
Yeah. Normally, when he goes all wishy-washy like that, I like to clarify, but I don't think I'll try. Why don't we get more copycats?
Well, it reminds me of our mutual friend Ed Davis. He figured out to do an operation that was so difficult that he operated at the bottom of a dark hole with instruments of his own creation. He gave his own shots by Novocaine, 87 of them, while he was operating. And it was a better operation. His death rate was 2%, and everybody else was 20. And the other surgeons came to copy him, and they watched him. And I just said, well, I don't think I'll try and copy that. I think it looks just too hard to do. There's nothing in an American business school that teaches people to be like Berkshire.
Eddie Davis is the guy that, in effect, introduced the two of us. He was a famous urologist here in Omaha, and
But people didn't try and learn his operation. It doesn't look all that easy. It's very different,
it's slow too.
and it's slow. It's very slow.
I think the slowness deters more people than anything else.
And the difficulty with being slow is you're dead before it's finished.
Well, that's kind of cheerful. Carol, let's come up with something a little.
For a more cheerful subject, mine is inflation.
Only compared to Charlie can inflation be cheerful.
I've just started reading Dream Big, the book recently released about your new Brazilian partners, and I'm really enjoying it. Their track records are unbelievable, and as a longtime Berkshire shareholder, I'm delighted that you've partnered with them and hope that Heinz is the first of many elephants that you bag together.
Can I interrupt you just for 1 second, Whitney? I appreciate that sentiment. And that book is available in. I should have mentioned it earlier. The book was written in Portuguese, and it was a bestseller in Brazil for the last year. But it just got translated very, very, very recently, and it is available at the Bookworm. So, Whitney, you can go on from there, but I did want to mention it's available.
Why would you assume that all of our shareholders
I'll also mention that it is only available on Amazon via Kindle. The only hard copies in the world in English that I'm aware of are available downstairs, so that will create quite a run on the book, I think.
We will raise the price.
Yes.
Well, first of all, let's ask who is the more frugal between us. Charlie, who do you think is?
Well, in personal consumption, Warren is more frugal.
Would you care to give an example?
Warren lives in the same house he bought for a very modest price, what, in 1950 something?
I bought it in 1958, and you moved into yours about 1960, didn't you?
Yeah, and I paid more.
But he designed his own.
Absolutely.
He designed his
He's
own
more
house.
frugal.
He did not pay an architect, right?
I did. I paid an architect $1,900. It was as much as 30% of the normal price.
Yeah. Notice how he remembers the details. I probably shouldn't tell you this when Charlie is having a little trouble there on those last two words. I get a little worried about Charlie. Don't know whether I should talk about this, but I thought maybe he was losing his hearing, and I didn't want to confront him with it. I mean, we've been pals for a long time, so I went to the doctor and I said, Doc, I've got this wonderful partner, but I think maybe his hearing is going on him, and I don't want to talk to him about it. I mean, how do you say that to somebody you've known that long? And what should I do? He says, well, you stand across the room, talk to him in a normal course of tone of voice, and let me know what happens. So the next time I was with Charlie, I stood across the room and I said, Charlie, I think we ought to buy General Motors at 35. Do you agree? Not a flicker. I go halfway across the room. I say, Charlie, I think we ought to buy General Motors at 35. Do you agree? Nothing. Get right next to him, in his ear. Charlie, I think we ought to buy General Motors at 35. Do you agree? He said, for the third time, yes. So speak up, speak up.